Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the YouTube Model Builders Fine Scale live build show for Tuesday, May 8th, 2018. Tonight, Miles is with us. Hopefully, Ralph will be able to join us here a little bit. Johnny, as always. Just a moment, we'll get caught up on what everybody's working on. Moment for Johnny to do the station identification that I always find so funny.
All right, you want to say go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can check the schedules for the shows for the Tuesday, Wednesday shows. Those are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The Thursday Johnny Mall Train Talk show is at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. So, and always check, make sure, see if we got any specials going on, because we do have one coming up. Hopefully at the end of the month. We're trying to work on the confirmation, so we'll let you know more about that in the next week or two. So anyway, it'll be a good, interesting show. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Andy and Miles. So let's see what they got going.
That's beautiful, Miles.
Thank you.
I know I think the other day, but that's spectacular.
That's about a week's worth of work there, just to put all the lights in. And are we ready to talk about techniques?
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay, well, first thing I want to point out is that, I represent wooden things a lot of times. So if I tell you things that are wrong, I'm sorry. They may fire me, but I want you to know how to take care of some of the products. Some of this was not their fault. I have O-scale, of course. And I have the new O-scale cars, just plug automobiles. And I really like the fancy fins, which is the one over here. I'm going to turn the house lights on. It'll kill the lights in the cars. But anyway, sorry. Here's the fancy fins. And I don't know if you can tell it. Let me kill the lights here for the motel. I'll pick this up and turn it, and then I'll try and come in really close if I can with the iPad and show you what I had to do here. There we go. I don't know if you can see inside underneath here, but it's actually black there, just beyond the headlight.
Right, yeah.
That's paint. Because when I lit the car up, the light, the LED inside it was so bright that it actually shone through the plastic. I could see the light here. It lit up this entire hood area. So actually, I took the car apart. It has 2 screws, if anybody wants to do this also. 2 screws under there, and if you're very careful, you can kind of pry it apart. Pry it from the back first, not the front. The front is interlocked. This piece goes underneath the bumper, so you have to take it out, pry it from the back side. I took that apart. There's some very delicate wiring in there, so you want to be careful when you do it. But I just painted this entire hood area with the black out paint that Wood & Scenic sells, although anybody's latex would actually work pretty well to do it. And then the thing that was not their fault, this is the Walters Motel. And I went to light up this area here. I'll turn the lights back off again. Whoops, come on. Here we go. Went to put my light in my little apartment here for the manager, and this entire wall, whoops, nothing's fastened down. This entire wall lit up. So once again, we can take the roof off of this. I do it gently. I'll show you what I did there. I have one of the Wood & Scenic lights inside here, and I built a little box to contain the light only in this corner. But you can see probably some of the black paint here that slopped over. Again, I had to paint those walls to get the light from bleeding through. I think a lot of people have talked about it at different times in different shows and different places. But you have to be very careful when you do some of these lighted projects to be sure and contain the light and not let it get out. Otherwise, I didn't do very much except this one. I want to get a piece of paperwork, and I'll show you that real quick.
Yeah, light bleed's a common problem. I've seen that by people reviewing locomotives even a lot, having light bleed problems. That's not uncommon, a problem to have to solve. I mean, one advantage I would argue in favor of wood is that a wood constructed building rarely has a light bleed problem.
I'm sorry, I meant to be better prepared. As this came from Walther's, it was the Route 66 Motel, which is fine, but as many of you may have heard me say several times before, I'm on the tour here for the Kansas City National Convention in 2018, this summer, come August the 5th. And Route 66 did not go through Kansas City. So Fran very quickly pointed out that what the heck do you have Route 66 in the Kansas City bottoms for? So I took an X-Acto knife, and this is the actual decal that was on the Miller Engineering sign. Miller made the sign for Walther's. And I actually took a knife and very carefully cut out this shield. Then I took a photograph of that with my cell phone and put it in Photoshop, and I simply took my clone tool and picked up the blue and wiped out all of the 66, picked up the red, wiped out the root, and then came back and typed in 50 highway, printed it out, and that's what you see here. Take you off the stand here again, give you a closer look. That's what you see now on the sign, and that is lighted. It'll kill the house lights. There we go. And it lights up, and that's just printed on standard white paper. So it actually came out looking pretty good. Its intensity is about the same as the motel sign. So it actually wound up working maybe a little bit better even than I thought it was going to, but at least the name is now correct. And I don't know, my best friend John Lawrence spent months, if not years, researching signs and eras, and signs for a certain decade had to be black backgrounds with white letters, and a certain decade had white backgrounds and black letters, and et cetera, et cetera. And I chose not to do quite that much in the way of research for signs. I just do what I want to do. But nonetheless, we did need to change that sign out so that it would read a Kansas City oriented business. And I think there actually was a 50 Highway Motel, if I remember right. I grew up on 50 Highway out towards Lee Summit. Anyway, so we tried to make it have a little bit better feel. The only other thing I've done around here, I'll turn you back around again, is oh, go for it.
I got a question here from Sparky. How you doing, Sparky? Sparky said, "Nice job, Miles. When you're using paint to hide light bleed, do you have to use the dark paint, or can it be the color of the building?"
I would assume that if it was latex, it could be the color of the building. I will say that I had no idea of making it look good. I put it on thick. It took overnight to dry because I put it on so thick. I mean, I just literally almost ladled it on inside there. I think it has more to do with thickness than with colorization.
Sure.
So I used black because I had some there, but man, I slopped it on. I had a 1/2-inch paintbrush, and I really gopped it in there because I didn't want to have to do it again.
And use a flat finish paint.
Yeah, it was flat latex from the craft store. It was that Cracker Barrel or Craft Barrel or whatever they call it stuff.
Yeah,
it was really thick, which is good. The only other things I've done lately is I've added the diner sign spinning. That's from Miller, just the way it comes. His mechanism is underneath here, and I just simply drilled holes through and mounted it. His motor drive is hanging down there. And once again, if we kill the house lights, there we go. I think you'll see it's a lighted sign. He sells those for desktop signs and whatever. And he just happened to have one that was diner, which fit my other one. I wish I could remember. This was out of a manufacturer, I believe, out of Texas. He only made a few kits. I don't know if Keith Wiseman has purchased it or not, but that's the diner. I put an interior in it with the guy at the counter and a couple people at the at the counter eating and had a pretty good time with that. So
That's a cool structure.
It really is. It was a super simple kit. I think it was like $30 O scale, which is dirt cheap. But it made up into
there's not a lot of good deals at O scale.
No, there's not. But that one made up into a pretty good deal. And then the other thing I've done, of course, is I'm working on sounds. I don't know if you've heard some of them around here, but this afternoon I was working on this guy. This right here, I'll put it in my hand. Look at the camera, make sure I've got it up there. Yep, that's all the bigger it is, about 2 fingers. That's from Engineering, and that's one of their sound modules. This one happens to be the pigs, hogs. And since this is my Kansas City Stockyards building, I have purchased pink pigs and brown pigs and black and white pigs. I probably have 300 or 400 pigs there ready to go in. Those that don't know, pigs cannot go in pens outside in the sun. They can't sweat. So the sun will actually kill them. And since you're trying to sell them and make money, you don't want to do that. So in Kansas City and Omaha and every place else, the pigs were put into buildings at different levels. So each one of these represents a pen. And I'll come back in here now and put fences in across here to show that each one is a pen. And then my sound module, let's got to find out where my speaker is here. Oh, I should show you here. I made this guy up. This has the speaker in there. It's walled off on the bottom. Put some screws on it to hold it. Got some alignment pins here to put him back together. There we go. He goes back. And that sound chamber then, I'll try and get it over here. Is that the mic? Can you all hear it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it makes it fairly loud. Now, I've turned the volume down a little bit because I don't want it to be too loud. And I think what I'm going to do in order to make that sound more realistic is I'll actually come in here, and Fred Hewlin, who was an absolute genius at sound, he made some sound modules that I used to sell, always wanted to cut a hole in the layout, then put some burlap glued on the hole. You scenic over it, you never see it, and then you can mount the speaker on the bottom side, and the sound will come out of wherever you want. I'd put it right in front of a tree if it was bird sounds. I'd put it in front of, right beside my lake if it was a babbling river sound. Put it in the bottom of a sawmill and covered over with sawdust so that the sound is actually there. So that's what I'll do here. I'll cut a hole in this mechanism, throw some straw in here over my burlap, and hide the speaker, and it'll actually have the sound actually coming from the pins. Excuse me, which is a little bit more realistic. So anyway, that's what I've been doing. I'll come around. I don't know if you want to let Ralph have a little bit of say there for a minute. I'll come around and show you what else I've been doing. And get my cord to go far enough. I have to unplug. The other thing I've been doing is I've been putting lights in everywhere. Can't have a city without lights. So this is my, I guess you'd call it industrial neighborhood. And it's mostly wooden scenics. I think only one that's not wooden scenics is the far one down there, which is the hobby shop from Menards. I have come back in now and added a bunch of lights because even with all the ones that Woodland Scenics puts in, I don't think they put enough. Besides my cycle shop here was after Jim. I don't know if you remember Big Jim from Michigan. Passed away not too long ago. But I've got lights here. I've got lights over his thing. I custom made it. This was his name and his motorcycle gang, Eclipse. And so I have all of that lit with lights inside. I came in, I put a light over or inside the entryway here, which they didn't have. Didn't do much else. In here, they actually had a hard casting that was not lit. So I came in, I drilled this light out, hollowed it a whole bunch, and then put an LED in it. So now I have light that shines down, and it lights that up. And I didn't do, I don't think, much in here. I have a light here over the entryway. I have all three lights here over my general store lighting up. The interior lights were already there. Put a light here over the entryway, and I added, this didn't have lights, excuse me, and I added 2 lights here over the shoe cobbler. While you're looking at this one, I'll run around and turn the lights off, but let's see if we can get this guy to work here.
Hey, Miles, no barber's pole?
Well, I have one, and I think what I'm going to do is put it in on the other street that I have over on the other side of the lab.
Oh, okay.
But yes,
okay.
I'll put one in. I found this guy, which is kind of unusual. I have no idea where that Coke machine came from. But it's actually lit. Lighted, however you want to put it. It's without the house lights.
Nice.
I'm having a heck of a time tonight talking, but this is my problem. But anyway, you can tell the Coke machine is all lit up. I don't think I added any lights here. Those all came with the Menards building the way it was. And then around the corner, turn the camera here. This is where the neighborhood's going in, and I promise I will do that last segment here sometime this next week. I've added, we take, sorry about that, layout in progress, pushing to get done and all that kind of stuff. That's Menards. Power and light building here. I didn't like the red lights. That they had red lights. Why, I have no idea. Blinking up here on the transformers, and I thought it really looked hokey. So I think you can see it. There's red lights here in the windows. Mm-hmm. There you go. Flash, flash. Anyway, so I took those off of here. I put them down inside. Now it looks like the maintenance guy needs to be coming because they've got some emergency in there. And then I did add a Miller Engineering ready kilowatt.
All right.
To the top, which I thought was kind of cool. The local model railroad group does a kit every year, once a year, usually around February or March. And all of us get together and we buy one. The club sponsors it. So this whole building was like, I don't know, $20 in O scale. But anyway, we built that one night. Actually, it takes all of us a little longer than one night, but nonetheless, we all get together and build. And I put lights in that. The next one is a Walters. And I'm going to come out of this thing again because it's just too hard to see. This is a Walters one. And what I did here was, of course, I put lights all the way along and underneath there. And I'm sorry for this. I'm going to flip you guys. It'll turn around automatic. But I've got an office then inside.
Nice. With the regulator clock on the wall.
Yeah. And this building was a contest winner 35 years ago. For a guy that was a sergeant in the Air Force, same time I was in, and I built that for him. Dick Schaefer was his name. And depending on how you read the sign, depends on whether or not you get a laugh. It could be Schaefer's Industrial Hauling and Transfer House. Or it could be Schaefer's Hauling and Industrial Transfer. Okay, nobody's getting it. SHI, never mind. Okay. Anyway, so now let's get the controller out of here. So this is the Menards green facility. Really ought to have the lights on because I redid this entire top section up here. I put new lights in. I stripped all the windows out, repainted them. Some of them were 3D printed, redone because it didn't look too good the way it was. Now it's named for Jim Flynn, who's a guy here in town. This is one of only 2 that I know of the Woodland Phoenix feed mills that has a particular characteristic. And I would call your attention to the sign over the office.
They put it upside down, though.
Well, you must be standing on your head, man. Because I called them and I said, do you know that your sign on top of that building is upside down? And they said, oh, Miles, send it back to us. We'll send you a brand new one. I said, are you kidding me? I got one of only two. It's a collector item. You'll see the other one if you go to Larry Alford's house here in Kansas City. He has the only other one that we know that has the upside down sign. Woody will have a heart attack when they come and see it that way. This is another Menards building. I didn't really do anything to it, but it does. It's kind of unique. I don't think you can see it. I get it up. We hold steady enough. The guy up in Canada, Model Tech Studios, sells a device for doing a fan in the window. And this, if I get my fingers out of the way, here we go. You see it or not? There it is. It's turning. They apparently got one of his mechanisms, and Menards actually put it into their building. Really cool. But the fan's sitting there spinning anyway. But that's been my activity. I came all the way down this wall, then I started across this wall, and in actuality, that motel is just beyond the trailers. It's sitting over here, and that's right as you come in the door. So it's going to be a first thing you see kind of deal.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
For this area that you're looking at right now.
For the city? Okay.
Yeah. You have the main city in the background. You have your buildings in the foreground. How did you do your separation between the two of them?
Okay, let me turn on the house lights. Okay. Okay, I have not done, as you can probably tell here, anything. I'm going to pick up the whole kit and caboodle here and give you a flyover. But you can tell here, I haven't done anything to separate that at this point. What I will do, and you kind of have to walk you around here again. Sorry, it's going to take a second to explain what I'm going to try to do. Oops, hello. How'd you flip? Hold on. Flip that back. There we go. So here we see I have the main line that's going to go down, and it comes around and goes in front of that industrial area that we looked at over there.
Right.
What I'm going to do here, Kansas City actually has an area just off of downtown called the ditch. And that's what I used to model this wall with. So I haven't done it yet, but I need the ditch wall along this section. And then I'm going to take that brown gator board there and cut it almost all the way back as far as it's showing right now. Back, let's see if I can get my finger in the shot again. There we go. I'm going to cut it back to about there. And I'll put some trees then. I'll put some trees along the wall here.
Okay.
And I'll also put some then probably up behind the buildings so that it kind of hides what's going on, because I want that track to disappear back in there. We didn't have any tunnels, so I don't want them to be there. And I'll put a bridge section across where I cut it back there at the back. So It looked like it's actually, we had a lot of streets in downtown that went over the ditch. And there was a guy, I think he's in Kansas, and he makes this really cool Kansas City looking bridge.
Oh, that is cool.
Isn't that neat? And I think what I'm going to do is take a section of that or a section of another bridge, and I'll put it in back there behind, probably behind the hardware store. This will end the ditch section. And then all of this section, which are the two tracks that come out, there's a switch underneath back here. I did a video on my free YouTube channel about the cameras. And I'm going to put one camera at this switch, another one back at the other switch, so that I can get into these two tracks. Anyway, I'll put cameras back there to watch how the trains are coming, because this will all be covered over with the cemetery in front and that neighborhood that I've been building back at the back. So all that light brown area will be covered. I need to know where the trains are. I'll do that with cameras.
Very cool.
But trees are wonderful. I just painted yesterday and today a bunch of fence, and I will use a bunch of fence back in behind the neighborhood area here. Behind each house, I'll put a fence as it steps all the way up along from here, there, there's 5 houses along there, and they'll all have fences that will break. I think Bob Brown at the Gazette, he uses a ton of fences to separate his real railroad from the background, and I think it's a genius idea because the eye and people, viewers, accept fences. They see them as natural items, and they don't see it as an unnatural separation. So I'll use fences back here to separate that.
Well, you just solved my problem that I have in the corner where I have very buried track with my town on top. So I like that. Now the photograph of the large town, is that an actual photograph?
That is a photograph. That is a photograph of Kansas City, Missouri, taken from what we call Confluence Park. It's across the river on the Kansas side, looking back at downtown. And there's, get my finger in here again. This was all water through here. Not where the buildings are, but where the trees are. I had a little bit of tree on one end of it. Got to move it over so I can see what I'm doing. I had a little bit of tree on this end of the photograph, down about like that. And the same thing then over on the other end. I had some trees here. This was all water. So I just took in Photoshop and cloned them and pasted trees over. And so long as I picked up the trees furthest away, I got this distance shadow.
Yep.
And I picked up the closer ones and put them in front. So it maintained the distance, and really, to me, it ended up looking like a pretty good distance shot.
Yep.
Absolutely.
The buildings were already in the mist and the fog because that park is a long ways over across the river. So they were really kind of foggy, and they really look way back off in the distance, which is the way they should look.
I like it.
Yeah, it came out looking pretty well, really. And my foreground buildings here, since they're brighter, more brilliant, they come forward and they look more like they're up front, and that city's going back behind this building. I don't know if I showed you once before, Larry Deal, my architect friend here in town, had an absolute brilliant idea for treating my corner here. And I tried it first to make sure it would work. I made up a cardboard template with the photograph just to make sure that everything would converge. This one I squared up. I squared this building, but I left this one skewed as it was in the original photograph. And of course, the finished look here, to me anyway, looks awfully good. And I've got a Walters City litho there to kind of add some distance. I've got a, I think this is an MTH and a Woody building up here in front. It all just tends to add to the depth. But I think that made for a pretty good corner treatment when you have to wrap around the corner.
Absolutely. So did you round your corner, or is it a 90-degree corner?
No, all corners are rounded. These are all cycloramas, even up into the ceiling.
Okay.
There are no corners in this room to the eye. Everything wraps.
Except at the floor.
Except at the floor, and it's hidden. Thank goodness. A ton of junk underneath the layout, like everybody else.
That's where most of the studio guys do the cycloramas, is into the floor. It's into the ceiling that makes that so doggone difficult to do. The corners are quite easy, yet I see so many modelers who have square corners, and to me it's just such an easy fix to do the corners, and it's so rarely done.
John Morantz, my best friend in San Antonio, we were both down there working together. He was making the stencils, and I was working on the cyclorama because I did it for a living for TV studios. And I tried to talk him into the cyc at the time, but he was smart enough, and he was very smart in the fact that he took his walls and he wrapped them one to the other. He didn't, take the ceiling into the wall, but he did wrap wall to wall. So let's get myself in the picture here. This is one wall coming in this direction, then another wall over here. So I actually have a corner in there. But of course, my only difference is that then I have a compound dish up here because my ceiling rolls down into the walls. And John didn't roll the ceiling into the walls, but he did roll wall to wall, and it really, like you say, it adds an immense amount of distance that you can't get any other way.
It's that.
And he just took cardstock and contact cement and glued it in the corner. And he just, he didn't try to fasten or anything. If it floated, if it moved in and out because of temperature or whatever, it didn't make any difference because it was fastened. Get my finger in here again. It was fastened on this side. It was fastened on that side. So if it floated or moved, who cared?
Yep. Or styrene or metal pre-painted aluminum flashing. Either one will make those. Styrene is a really easy way to cover those corners. It's getting the compound corner is a little against the ceiling. That's a little involved.
Yep.
Yeah, a little bit. It's not too bad, really.
No, well, you've got a great technique for doing it.
We got a couple of comments here before we get too far along and out of the subject area. First one's from where'd he go? Nathan DeLay. Nathan wanted to know, Miles, what is the layout trying to represent? Nathan's one of our newer fellows, so he doesn't know what you're doing there.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm 72 years old. I am not just beginning. For 40 years plus, I modeled Colorado narrow gauge. Every railroad that I ever built had floor-to-ceiling scenery. It was nothing to put 4,000 to 6,000 pounds of plaster in a layout. And quite frankly, I just got burned out on that. And I decided that I wanted to do what John Lawrence, my best friend, always called the canyons of New York, because he models New York. And I wanted to do the canyons of my hometown, which is Kansas City. So I'll turn the camera around here somewhat slowly, but these are all the bottoms of Kansas City. That thing there is going to be the Kansas City Stockyards building. But here you can begin to see the buildings in the background all the way around the room. These are all photographic buildings that are on the walls. The rest of the ones out front are real buildings. But those photographic buildings wrap around the entire wall. And I did a video at one point. I'll go around here and show you. Anyway, I'll answer your question while I'm walking. I'm modeling the Kansas City Terminal Railway. The Kansas City Terminal Railway was not owned by itself. It was owned by the Union Pacific, the Kansas City Southern, the Illinois Central, any railroad that came in and serviced Kansas City through the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s owned the Kansas City Terminal. The unique feature of the Kansas City Terminal was that they could switch anybody's cars because they were owned by that particular railroad. So it didn't make any difference whose cars they came to get. It's not like in some cities the actual railroad that had the cars had to do the switching for those cars or trade them off to another railroad. Not so with the KCT. The KCT just picked up the cars and moved them from Union Pacific or MOP or whatever with no interaction, paperwork, permissions from the railroad, whatever required. So I'm modeling the railroad that did all the transfers within Kansas City, which is the reason for modeling Kansas City. Here you can see the Western Auto Building. I think, I don't know if I get it here laying here still or not. Yep, I do. This is, of course, a national landmark, and I've taken and I've soldered a brass model of the Western Auto sign, and we're going to have the big arrow and the letters that go on here, and that will stick up here on top of the Western Auto sign and then the Western Auto building, and it will be lit up. Right now, you can't tell it, but I have the airplane hazard lights up here. There's red flashing LEDs that are going off. This is the Sunshine Bakery building. And I went over and I pulled that down because I want you to see that now inside the room, excuse me, I have the hiccups. Inside the room, you now are surrounded by buildings. There is no place that you can look, anything that you do not see the railroad and Kansas City in the bottoms. It surrounds you 360 degrees. So you are, by my estimation, in the bottoms. And that's my goal, to put you in the environment that the Kansas City Terminal actually ran in. And there's a video on this if you care to see it on Train Masters on how I made that move. But that's, we lower that and it I have some pins in there that keep trains from running into the gaps because I run by battery. Locomotives I don't run off of the track power. So there is a danger that my locomotives can run into that gap if I don't put physical barriers, which I do, in there to keep the trains from dropping in the hole.
All right, got, let's see. Dwight said, what? No Dr. Pepper machine when you're showing the Coca-Cola machine. And, yeah, but you got the Coca-Cola machine. He said, no Dr. Pepper machine.
Well, as soon as somebody makes one, or I may make one in Photoshop and bring it in. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
They look pretty good out of paper. I've seen them made out of paper, and they're pretty decent.
Yeah.
Well, and I also have some Dr. Pepper Miller Engineering signs, and I may put those up on some of the buildings.
Because Ron's trains and things, he said that he grew up there. His dad was a farmer. Yeah, he did hog farming. Yeah,
it's really neat. Ron has come by the layout here a couple times in the last month. And gotten to be pretty good friends. He does a great job.
Yeah, did you charge him triple?
No, I can't. He's a minister. You have to watch what you say and what you do. Okay?
Yeah.
I tried to put on my better behavior for him.
Yeah, you were talking about your other layouts having all that plaster. Ron's comment there was Andy Stream, 4K to 6K pounds of plaster, LOL.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see, there was something else here. Where'd it go? Sparky is going, are you going to add lighting to some of the backdrop buildings that you built?
I have debated about it seriously over the past month or two because I'm doing so well with some of the lighting up front. I'll bring over here and show you one of the buildings and we'll talk about it. My problem is that one of the neat things about the photographic buildings, if you look at the windows, is that as I took the photographs of these buildings, these are actual buildings from the bottoms of Kansas City. They reflect in the glass of the window what was across the street, in the sky, whatever. I mean, they are actual buildings with actual reflections. I'm looking for where my camera is, so I'll put my finger in front of the lens again. Here's a good example. You can see that I have some reflections there in those two windows. Down there, we'll see if we can find some others around here that are equally. I mean, and besides that, the colorization of the windows, that green industrial look there. I have windows over here in the furniture company at the back that have curtains in some of it, and we have as you see it, there's a light, I think, in the second and third floor there beside the fire escape. There's a couple of lights behind there in the windows. My problem is, if I went to cut that out, and I'll show you, I have one over here, but I've done that. I started to make the Kansas City Stockyards, this big brown thing. I've started to cut windows out in that. That was my very first project before I did any of these background buildings. And here's about 100 windows, all of them cut out. And an example here of the way I was going to do it. This, you can see the reflection here right now. I've got these little pieces of angle that are my sills. This is a cutout here that was done on the laser for the window mullions. I've got file card material back here for screens and a black thing back behind that. First of all, that window takes about 6 parts. I'm getting my finger over. It takes about 6 parts to make, and you're going to do it that many times. Plus, I need windows on this wall, windows on this wall, windows on this wall, this wall, this wall. I mean, I keep going. It goes on all the way around. There's like 8 sides to that building. And I think I calculated one time there's 500 or 600 windows. It would take me the rest of my lifetime to make all those windows. So the long, short answer to that is no, I'm probably not going to, not only because I cannot duplicate these reflections. if I cut this window out, it's going to look like that one that was in the Stockyards building. And trying to get this same look so that the window looks like it's part of that building would be very difficult to do. I thought about putting the red lights on. I'll take over and show you that over here. I thought about putting the red lights on. There we go. I think you can see he flashes every once in a while.
Yep.
And I thought about doing that. Again, the problem is, however, the thickest building I have here against the wall, I'll bring you up so you can see it from above, is only about an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches out from the wall. So if I put a light there on that top corner, it's going to shine on the wall. And I lose my illusion of the depth. So there's all kinds of illusion and depth problems and holding reality problems. I mean, it just keeps compounding itself. So the long story short is, no, I'm probably not going to put lights in those. I will put as many as I can in a bunch of these foreground buildings, because I think what I'm after is to create the glow of the city. I want this city to glow, and I have 5 peninsulas here across the room. Let's see if I can pick you up and show you. Here's the first one, second one, third one. I don't know if you can see the other 2 over there on the far side, but there's 2 more. One against the wall and one other sticks out. By the time I get as many lights as I need and want, because every building in here will have multiple lights, I think I'm going to have enough to make the room glow. My goal almost is to have it glow without having to have any other lights on. If I want to do a twilight operating session, the city will give its own ambiance. But I don't know if I can get that much light in my lifetime or not, but that's the goal. I am not satisfied with the lights that I have in here. I went to China like everybody else does nowadays. Turn these off and show you again, except this time I'll show you the ceiling. I went to China and I bought the strip lights that do the 3 colors, and basically, as far as I'm concerned, they don't do the job. Let's see if we can get your hand over here. This is, God bless, come on. I stop staying on the cord. Am I not seeing them? That's my problem. There we go. Okay, that's them. I've strung them along the side of my light pockets. And you can see they give light to the room. They're not too bad. But this happens. Usually every second or third time I turn them on. I've got to come now on that string and take my remote and push the white button, and it goes away. But it's a nuisance. The other thing I have, and I don't know if it's doing it tonight or not, the one over on the far side goes dim and comes up, and goes dim and comes up. So they're pretty, what I'm getting at is they're pretty low quality, one would expect. There's a wholesaler that I used to use when I built model railroads commercially, and I used to have the special effects company called Outwater Plastics. They're up in New York and in Canada, and they provide really high-end equipment for store display manufacturers. And they have all kinds of lighting that are not available on a normal Lowe's, Home Depot, or even a lighting store that you might go to. Really great stuff and unusual. And they have a bunch of lights that are made to light up the counters. If you've gone into the 7-Elevens now and seen the candy counters that are all lit up, they have those kinds of strip lights. And they have much better dimmers, much higher quality dimmers. And I think what I'm going to do, I think what I can get away with is I'll have none of the strip lights in this end pocket. I'll put one in here. I'll skip the next one. Then I'll put one, this is actually my center of the room pocket. I'll put one in there, skip again, put one, let's come around this way. I'll put one in this next to the end, and skip here and skip this one in the center. And I think 3 of them will give me as much lighting as I need, and with the better dimmers, I'll be able to control the amount of light in here. The other thing I don't like, and I don't know if you can tell it, let's kill this again. I get an awful lot of fluorescence with these RGB lights. They tend, I don't know if you can tell it or not over there, but those reefers are glowing orange.
Yeah.
Mainly because of the light quality of those RGB red light LED lights. So there's several problems. There's several problems that come with using those LEDs that I don't like, and I need to improve some way. I really don't want to go back to putting an incandescent up there, because I don't think you're going to be able to buy incandescents in another 10 years.
Sparky said you got mood lighting or Saturday night at the bar.
That's right. That's what I need.
Well, I would recommend anybody looking at that. So a couple things with LED lighting. And Mike Deverall done one of the best video kind of summaries on the consequences of lighting, and there's trade-offs with every style you get. Fluorescents have a tendency to wash things out, and they don't cast realistic shadows, whereas spot bulbs, halogens, or vacuum fluorescent tend to cast shadows well, but you tend to get a lot of dark spots, hot and cold spots, you'd call it. The problem with LEDs is throw distance. So if you have a shadow box layout with a deck above it on a multi-deck layout, and you have a throw distance of 16, 18, maybe even 24 inches, LEDs work really well. But as you start getting out some distance from the LEDs, the spread and the dispersion starts to become a problem. I also, after seeing some experience with some of the guys who've been working with LEDs, I haven't seen the straight blue light like what that we used to do that years ago with strings of blue Christmas lights, and that's what I had on the layout years and years ago, was the big Christmas light bulbs like you had in the 60s or before, with the big huge bulbs the size of your thumb, the blue ones. Those made a pretty good blue color. They were hot and cold spots, made a good blue color. The blue with the LED is a little too, for my personal taste, is a little too artificial looking. And what I've liked is a really dim warm white with some blue mixed together, so that you're kind of diluting the blue intensity, because it's pretty artificial looking in my. It's a little black light, like you say. You're getting that reflection effect or fluorescent effect.
I tell you what. If you are in the viewers, I think what I'm. Yeah, we're getting an echo somewhere. I think what I would do is try and get Jerry Cornwell on the show. Maybe we could do it next month or something. Jerry's up in Canada. Jerry used to own Mount Albert Lumber before he sold out to Fast Tracks. And Jerry, Mount Albert Lumber was a sideline, because Jerry is one of the most decorated lighting engineers probably in the Northern Hemisphere. He is a genius at it. He lights theaters and office buildings and etc. And I've been to his layout where he actually used LED lighting for his layout. And I think, it might be a good show to do next time, to get him on here and discuss LED lighting and where to get it and how to go about it and what effects would be achieved by it. That might be a good thing if everybody has enough interest in, because I think LED lighting is coming. And if you can afford to put it in now, I would do it, because you're going to have to change anyway down the line.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, without a question. LED's the future. It's the right balance of what. So at the moment, I'm using a combination of long tube LEDs that I'm eventually going to use over the aisleways for maintenance, cleaning, working on the layout. And I'm going to use LED strips. But I have a very short throw distance, so I can get away with that. And I'm going to mix LED colors together and balance those in computer software, using an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi to balance them, because it's just complicated. There's some more expensive ways to do it, like buying Philips Hue bulbs, where you can adjust the color. The problem with that is the cost it takes to light a layout. And even with LED, I still think, and me and Ralph were talking about this, I think it was me and Ralph, just a few days ago, I still think there's a purpose for spot bulbs, even if they're LED spots, the little 12-volt RV LED spots.
Yes,
right. That was last night.
Right, you can cast shadows with them, and something that we've lost on our model railroads as we went to fluorescent, 20 years ago, as a common thread, was you don't get shadows that are realistic, and missing the shadows is a problem. People like Trolls Kirk over in Sweden or wherever he's from.
Sweden.
I
He's
thought,
a Dane living in Sweden.
yeah, and he has painted the shadows into his layout. He has a fluorescent lit layout, but he's painted shadows. So he has a structure, and he has taken and laid a cardstock down or something and airbrushed a shadow to the side of that building to cast light in a certain way. And not having shadows is there's things about when you look at a photo of somebody's model railroad that's just spectacular, and you say, oh, it's almost photorealistic. I can tell it's a model, but well, how can you tell it's a model? Oftentimes, you can't put your finger on exactly what's missing. You just know something's missing. Something's it's in the robot world or in the artificial intelligence world, computer world. We call it the uncanny valley. When it's so close to being realistic that you think that robot's human, but it's just off a little bit, and it makes you feel a little weird. And they call it uncanny valley. And the risk of a model railroad that is approaching photorealistic is that you get this kind of uncanny valley effect where it looks real, but you can tell that it's kind of VR or there's some computer graphics stuff on it. Same thing happened in early computer graphics generated movies. There was an uncanny valley effect. And we can fix a lot of that in our modeling if we're aware of it. And the correct lighting, I think, is the best medicine to it is probably in lighting. And I think there's a lot of interest in the community as to how to light their layouts best. And we've had that conversation almost as much as the photo versus painted backdrop versus.
Are you going to start that again?
No. I'm just using it as an. I don't have to. I don't have to pick on one argument. Me and you got a dozen debates in long-standing running, Ralph. So we can pick on about any of those. Speaking of which, I still have a comment on the backdrop too. One of the best ways I've seen for in an urban area or a semi-rural area, fencing spectacular. I mean, boy, you can't beat a fence along the right of way. It doesn't cast a shadow, or along the backdrop edge, it doesn't cast a shadow. It hides so many effects so well. And little rows of grass and stuff at the edge of a field works pretty well. Little things like that take the fact that there is an exact line there and take that exact line and recreate it in something natural that would be an exact line.
But it blurs the line.
That's right. And trees and stuff like Joe Fugit uses some mesh material, stuffs it back behind his trees in the back, and that's just a win. I mean, that's just the thing to do. I mean, you get the back, you're never going to get. I mean, even you get an area up here. I've got over almost 500 trees in this corner over here, and you can still see through them into a photo backdrop. So I'm going to go back and fill that in with some filter material. But Lex Parker. I've used him as an example numerous times because he's got he's one of the few people that have painted a backdrop that are right at any standard of backdrop you could ask for. It's spectacular. I mean, his work is incredible.
Here's a guy, I questioned him when I went to his layout, Andy. He said, I am not an artist. I painted that backdrop with a knife.
Okay, he's not an artist. Right. I'll give you that. An artist is a real vague term. People argue that, especially the kind of artistry people tend to argue whether they're artists or not. If you produce spectacular artwork, it's artistry. So an artist had to make that artistry. I don't care what art form that is or what title you put on yourself or whether you have business cards printed that say artist under it or not. Lex Parker's an artist. His work is spectacular, but it's still some of the best painted backdrops, just spectacularly brilliant painted backdrops, and it still is right at the level that you can get with a photo for $50. So it's really hard to argue with photo when anybody can do it, and I'm an engineer, so photos work for me. But he did a trick that I just absolutely fell in love with for those of us who model very rural or remote areas. Instead of having a fine line, that 90-degree pitch where the scenery meets the backdrop, and we used to use tricks years ago. You want to try to make the hillside go up and roll off before it hit the backdrop. That was a common thing. he does the exact opposite. You would think it would bring it forward that he did that, and it doesn't. Is he brought the scenery and just molded it right up into the backdrop, and he runs his ground foam or static grass or whatever right up into that backdrop and just blends that. It is just faded in together with the 3D effect, let alone the colors and the materials and everything. So you can tell that there's a photo here, that there's scenery material here, but exactly where that line is, that gets really foggy or froggy. And that's a spectacular effect. I mean, that's just one of those little tricks that you're just like, once you've seen that, you can never not do it.
We used to say two things when we did our background clinics. One is you never want to let the viewer see that joint where the layout, physical layout meets the background. Whatever you do, trees, fence, whatever, hide it. And the other thing is, we used to say that really what you want to do is do something with the background that is not spectacular. Because
sure.
If you do that, people are going to say, would you mind moving those trains out of the way so I can see the background? Background's not what we're about, you know?
It needs to be, background is much like, it's ambient. It's just like, it's ambiance. It's much like the sound that we keep talking about, your sound of the pig.
But it's not standout.
That's right. And it's another one of those uncanny valleys. If it's great, it's a problem. If it's crappy, it's a problem. It needs to be, and I believe model railroading is all about balance. If you're going to put grab irons and chain and everything on a Craftsman car kit and use puffball trees, and if you're going to use spectacular trees and not use pretty detail, you know, it's whatever you do, whatever level of quality is your quote unquote good enough, wherever that is for you, whether that's a 6-inch rule or 3-foot rule, whatever you are comfortable with as a modeler, that needs to be fairly consistent across the board, because the things that aren't consistent will stand out. If you've got a beautiful craftsman structure here and you've got a Plasticville structure next to it, the disparity between those is much more noticeable than the fact that either one of those is extraordinary or quite the contrary. Yeah, what you got?
Well, I was kind of hoping you'd just keep talking. Give me a couple of seconds, get my mic turned on. You guys are catching me tonight.
That's right.
Well, let's see. John Dealey and Andrew, your twin. Andrew M. that comes in chats. Both of them are saying that lighting show would be good. You know, I also have to get a hold of Jerry and talk with him about that. Let's see. Lloyd, MHO Junction. I'd rather look at Miles's photo backdrop than a city painted anytime.
Oh, painting a city. I can't imagine that painting a city could be. Now,
he's aiming that one at me.
All right. And we got another one here that I'm not sure if I want to read it or not, because I know it's going to set off a big discussion. How you doing, Al? This is Al Marr Jr. Is there any interest on running your layout on solar? RGB lights use a lot less power than the lighting. But the lighting is not great, but may supply enough power to run a system. That sounds like a Thursday night discussion.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I mean, I will say, I'm taking into account everything I've done, from my computer infrastructure to the Raspberry Pis that run my home automation to everything I've done for the last 4 or 5 years in electronics, and I take that into account with my model railroad, is that I absolutely intend to invest in solar when I build the new house. So, but I don't think that's that hard. I could run, any traditional house could run on solar. There's no issue with that. It's good to be energy conscious, but you just don't need that much power to run a model railroad, generally speaking. If battery, I mean, I'm going battery. Just as soon as I can go battery powered. I know Miles has already done it. And if I was in S scale, let alone O scale, I would have never started anything other than battery power, without a question. In HO scale, I'm still going to go battery power, but there's still some challenges for battery.
That's quite okay, Al.
What was the first comment? Oh, about the painted backdrop. the city, urban backdrops. Man, I can't imagine. You could, a person could do it. There's people who do urban scenery landscapes effectively as paintings. I'm never going to pull anything like that off, period. I could blueprint you a structure, paint it on a wall, but John Allen used photoreactive or phosphorescent paints in the windows on his backdrop. And I was going to mention a couple of things to Miles about ways to get that effect on windows on your backdrop is the photofluorescent paint. And they have that's transparent these days that you can paint it on and you cannot see that. You can still see a little bit when the lights were on, overhead lights. But they've got it now that you can paint it over it. It's a clear coat, but then it's photoreactive under UV lighting or under high UV lighting. But you can do that with like infrared. You can do that with the infrared lights that you use in video recording to light up that effect. You can use, they make those lights that are used for night vision cameras that are not visible to the human eye, but they will activate that photofluorescent effect. Another thing I seen that really interested me and I had not done yet, but City Classics, Joe, what's his name?
Jim Sacco.
Jim Sacco. Man, he's got some really creative products, and he has that material that's on clear plastic, whatever, that are building interiors, and he has signage and stuff like that already printed on the plastic that most of us use. But you could take those windows, chop them out in Photoshop, and print them semi-transparent. I mean, maybe even print them, quite heavy, print them at a quite high quality, so they're just somewhat transparent, or paint them transparent and back paint them a little bit so that you just get a little light effect. That's just kind of some instinct I had thought about that. It'd be worth trying. But that reflection is really hard to get. That's why I went to using that real glass, that Sierra scale models or the microscope tiles, the Sierra scale glass, because the semi-flexible plastic we use, acetate or whatever, it's not very reflective. Real glass is quite reflective.
Okay, you talked about Lex Parker, and you talked about painting cityscapes. I'm not supporting painting cityscapes.
No doubt,
because there's no way that you can take an average guy to paint a city scene unless you want an abstract.
Okay, but you don't need to.
Yeah, but then it'll look like crap. As an abstract, it'll look like crap. So this is where the argument came in the other night that Robert stepped in. I think a combination of painting backdrops and photographic is the way to go. It's not all photographic. I cannot see photographic of a whole row of trees.
Okay. I don't disagree with. There is a purpose in painting. Like, I don't know that you could do, like his clouds, I don't know that you could do a better cloud than what you can do with those templates and a spray can. I just don't know that a photo is a better cloud in any way than those clouds that are done with a spray can. And it doesn't require any distinct artistry to do it. Templates and a spray can, and, no offense to Miles, but what he did is create or come up with an idea for how to do it that would allow anybody that's not an artist to make clouds that look like him.
Yeah.
So here's an example that I was trying to say. So this is Lex Parker's. That's a painted backdrop. And I cannot see putting a photographic backdrop in there, because you would have to have a photograph of the exact moment when the mist is in certain areas to get that graying effect as it goes back.
But I think you could overspray. I agree with the combination of techniques, and I think you could overspray photos. But what he did is he painted the rear mountains first.
Exactly. That's how you do it. And if you follow any videos, that's what they tell you to do. Start in the distance and move forward. And
I think you're just rubbing in that you got to visit his layout again. I understand.
No, I'm not rubbing it in. He lives close to me. That's why. This is what he painted this with a palette knife.
I've been there. It's phenomenal. It really is, the whole thing.
I've used him as an example to argue against my own case numerous times. They're spectacular.
And you can see there, it just sort of blends right in, but that's all painted. And it really has to do with the area that you're modeling.
Sure.
In his case, the Rio Grande and so on, it's got a lot of those colors in his backdrops. And that's the way he paints them. So
the point is to capture the illusion. Whatever technique gets you there.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
All right, we got, let's see. Oh, first off, Lloyd, he's going, LOL, that's what I have, Ralph, thanks. You know, about the photograph backdrops.
His backdrops are really, really nice, though. I mean, they're.
Yeah.
I'm a convert to photo backdrops. After Mike Confalone's layout sold me on photos, and I've seen him done even better on other layouts. But photo backdrops, I really get sold on that.
All right, let's see. Where'd he go? Yeah.
Where'd he go, George? Where'd he go?
All right, real quick. This guy, he calls himself South Brooklyn Railroad, Mr. New Yorker. Big Bill. He said, whatever happened to paint by number painting?
Paint by number.
Andrew M. LEDs are such a bunch of light. Witness Christmas lighting are easily recognizable. I often wondered if it could be softened using vellum. And then
sure.
AIKAGI000. There are really good cloud images you can find as a PNG files.
Mm-hmm. There are. The problem, actually, maybe I rephrased this. I don't have a problem with photographic clouds. The problem is the blue, the background of the clouds, getting that to blend. And that's why a lot of people who do photo backdrops cut the sky out, because it's incredibly hard to deal with seams in the sky, even if they're great. And it's incredibly hard to blend multiple colors or diverse colors of sky together. And it's also pretty hard to get that effect. Like Miles, I'm sure he's got that effect where it's lighter at the bottom, and it's, there's a color difference from bottom to top that you want to, roll or airbrush in to get the haze distance effect. And I'm a big fan of overpainting photo backdrops to get the haze and
misty look,
pastel. So as you look into the distance, colors pastel in color. So recreating that, a photo is, going to get that really well.
Also, Dwight, could a person airbrush clouds / mist into a photo? And Ron Strains and things. I painted my clouds wet on wet stippling white
and blend them
onto the wet sky blue. I also do mist with an airbrush for the distant mountains, horizontal, etc.
Yep. I believe mist, and when I do the scene where I'm gonna have a fog machine effectively in that corner, I have a photo backdrop back there, but I am gonna overspray it.
Yeah, and Brian.
I just don't think photo that in.
Yeah, Brian W. Hey, Brian, how you doing? CG Textures has a lot of images for download that you can rescale.
Yeah, man, brickwork, all kinds of concrete roads. Miles once talked about doing roads by photoing them from above and then taking that print out and putting it onto the road surface. I'm still in love with that idea, even though I've built roads in about 5 different ways over the last probably 6 months, making different types of road material, and I still haven't found anything I'm totally in love with. But the photos,
I found something that you might enjoy or might like. You go out and you can buy the 16th inch thick cork.
I've got some.
lay it down. Do
Yeah.
your base work first, the contour and everything you want. Lay the cork on it, paint it, and you can all the color of the road work, the texture from the cork gives you the asphalt.
Yep. And some cracking. And you can create cracking by bending it and stuff. That's the effect I was
or
doing.
Even take sections out to make potholes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've got some of that. I've done some of that. And Lloyd done it, and his do look really good. And I think it's a spectacular asphalt. Absolutely spectacular. Concrete seems to be a little more elusive to me. The one that I've really liked so far is I used spackle before, and that looks really good. I used to use plaster; it looks really good, but it's you know my love affair with plaster. I like the Durham's water putty put over top of cheesecloth and then broke it up. It's just I just haven't mastered the technique yet. I've done it a couple times, and I've still got some work to do to master it. And eventually, when I do master it, we'll talk about it on here. But I'm still testing that technique.
Yeah,
I think the world is better.
Brian W. said that CG Textures is the .com address. They were in Scale magazine this issue. A lot about 3D effects on your backdrop. And he's going, has anyone tried Silly Winks? It's a foam-based material that takes paint well, 1 meter to 4 meter thick.
Yeah, I got a couple. Yeah, millimeters. I got a couple sheets of the stuff after seeing somebody do that on a YouTube video, and I bought a couple sheets of it, and it's got a weird waviness to it that has just annoyed me, and I haven't done anything with it. I'm kind of finicky about the roads. I'm not sure.
Just the roads?
Okay, there's a few things. There's a couple of things.
Nice.
All right, but trying to capture the city streets of 1950, I mean, they were cracked, and it seems there's so much going on there, so much detail to try to capture it. It's incredibly difficult or it has been for me, to get something that I'm the least bit satisfied with. And I see other people's roads. I mean, Gino's roads made out of foam core through the city look spectacular on photo. Great. I'm sure they look good in person, too, no doubt about it. Mine look good, and you know, it's a lot harder to get something that looks good in person than it does. You know, photos let you buy with a lot more.
Hey, Ralph.
Andy,
yes, sir.
You really should get out of Kentucky because Toronto and Kansas City have beautiful streets. You need to get out and see the world.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miles. I wasn't going to say anything, but
But if you're
Ralph,
in the woods of Virginia,
Ralph,
John.
I just took my shoes off to help you count how many finky ways Andy's got.
We brought over the guy up in Toronto today for a company, and he was talking. Josh was he was on the conference call with me, and he was giving me a hard time, saying he's from East Kentucky, and I bet he's got his shoes off in his office right now. I can't get him to keep his shoes on for nothing. So. When Josh come out to my wedding, he said, "Man, I figured I would get into the spirit of it. As soon as I hit the Eastern time zone, I took my shoes off. Man, I'm gonna be one of you guys."
And I lived there for a long time. Remember, Kentucky.
Yeah. There's a personality to Kentucky that annoys me sometimes. But speaking of the future shows and stuff, I've talked to a couple of people about getting interviews together. We just never got the timing right. I'm sure we will, but I'm really interested in doing a show around. You talk about a lighting show, which is critically needed because we've talked about it a lot, and we've never had anybody with any serious expertise to really comment on it. And I've talked to a few people about coming in for a show about layout design for presentation. You know, how to capture, you know, from the shadow box effects to I went out of my way to get one thing that I couldn't have described to you 3 years ago. I couldn't tell you what I wanted to do, but it's controlling viewing angles, controlling where you're seeing it from, sight lines and such. Now, I couldn't have put the words to it before. I would just say, well, I'm just looking for it to look like something like this. And I even drew that up. I even storyboarded it initially. You know, drew, and my drawing is awful. Like there's a little stick guy standing there. but I was kind of storyboarding what I wanted for these kind of viewing angles. This is how I wanted the scene to look. And actually, my storyboards, I stuck to my storyboards reasonably accurately, but my track plane is all over the place. And that doesn't hurt my feelings at all. I cared a whole lot more about the storyboard effect than I did the track plan for the first time of my life.
Well, I will talk to Jerry if you want to try that.
Sure. I look forward to that. Well, and anybody that follows the show, let us know the things that you're interested in that way, and we'll try to facilitate that. Both of those subject, matters are pretty important to me. I care a whole lot about, some expertise on those, as well as, I've been thinking a lot about, and me and Miles and others have talked a lot about sound as a scenery mechanism. I've thought a lot about that. That's kind of an electronicsy thing. But how to do it? There's a big division, in my opinion. I always separate these things. The effect of sound is a scenery thing. How you get there is an electronics thing. So how we got there is much more in line with what Hale would do, what Chris Hale would do on the Arduino show. And I don't at all want to get into how to do it per se, but how to implement it. From the hiding of it to how to point it. And I've pointed speakers in different directions. You get especially on the smaller speakers, you get a massive different effect as you turn the speaker in different ways. So I'm still playing with it.
Well, something about when we went to the Toronto convention, Ralph, you've got a whole bunch of people up there in Canada that do micro layouts, and they are controlling viewing angles and that kind of stuff. If you know of some of them, they would be great to get on and talk about that very thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, up here in the Toronto area, the guys are very guarded with their layouts, and you can be standing talking to somebody and not know he's a model railroader until somebody points it out.
What did Lionel Strange say about it? He said being from that area up there, so he probably has the same idea. And I'm not sure it's that different out here actually either. Model railroaders are like they're in MI6. You'll never know they're a model railroader until you do. Lionel Strange, that's not my opinion.
Especially up here in the Toronto area. When I went to the convention and so on in Ottawa, the guys they share back and forth.
What you're in kind of thing.
What's that?
What you're in the circle. I mean, I thought that in Knoxville years and years ago.
I wasn't in the circle, but they brought me in when I went to the convention, and normally that wouldn't happen here in Toronto.
Really? So no blood oath or nothing?
Nope.
But I know we're running a little bit long, but I want to show you what I've been working on with this. I was going to show you a few details about it, but I can cover it pretty quickly. Actually,
I'm going to head out. Leave it with you all. Sorry.
Okay, Miles, right. Take care, buddy.
Take care.
Say hello to Fran for us.
I will do it. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay.
So I've been fascinated for a while with a few of these people, especially some of the German modelers, or let's just say European modelers, and I mean, they picked up static graphs long before we did. The advanced DCC systems, they're in many ways they're ahead of us, especially with scenery. A lot of the Warhammer guys do some spectacular scenery, like I've said, like a lot of us said. I think most of us think this way. If you care about weathering, you're paying attention to the military guys. You're giving them credit. If you care about scenery, the Warhammer guys are worth paying attention to. They've got some really original techniques. And when we were just adopting static graphs 20 years after it started becoming popular overseas using rayon fabrics for that, they've started moving to the bats, to grass bats, like Martin Welberg bats. I've had a couple of those. I've got them cut up. They're quite spectacular. This is a Hecky bat. It's a good bat. It's a doggone good bat. They're a little consistent, a little even, and they're pretty expensive. You can spend a lot of money if you're using grass bats to
the nice part about those, Andy, is you can cut little sections out and plant them.
Yeah, I rip them. But I've been doing this for more than a year, but I didn't realize that it wasn't popular, that it wasn't a common thing to do. Because I found out about it from like somebody I was talking to at a hobby shop. When I travel for work, I try to visit a hobby shop, and some of the guys are sitting around talking about having used a plant topper. This is a piece cut up, and I've already cleaned the bottom of it up. But you could use the bottom material. I took it has a bottom on it that's sawdust, kind of, but it's got a more coarse texture. It makes a really good forest floor, but it's a really good grass material. I mean, a quite good grass material if treated properly. And you can buy a pack of 3. They're 8 inches round or so. You can buy a pack of 3 of these for $10 on Amazon with free shipping under Prime account. That's dirt cheap. I paid $5 for it at the hobby shop. I think I bought it at Caboose in Denver, but I'm not positive. It might have been the one in Seattle. And the guys were talking about cutting up plant toppers. He's like, "Yeah, I bought a few of them the other day." I was like, "That's a spectacular idea." They're dirt cheap, and they're in a way, for certain material, they're actually better than the grass mats that we buy that you buy from Hecky and Silflor, and I use them all over. I mean, I've got grass mats. Now, this is under construction area, but I've got grass mats of multiple kinds and styles all around the layout, and then I tear them up and use them along the right of way and edges. All in the scenery. There's grass mat pieces everywhere. I fell in love with using grass mats, particularly, but. Okay, but but there's some consequences to using these. They have a thickness to them that need to be worked. They have a fiber underneath them. You've got to tear them apart and work them correctly. After this video is posted, I'll reply with a comment with a couple of the links that I've now found after going and looking for information for you. Let me quickly show you what they look like originally, and then I'll show you what it looks like on the layout. They also do something that I can't seem to do with a standard grass mat, is to create the kind of effect where the grass grows and the hillside fades out from under it. Or that's the underside of them. That's some scenery done with them. And they've got this polyfill material in the middle of it. That's might be a better picture. Not a very big picture, but it's a plant topper. Looks like grass. Looks like static grass done with rayon fabric. And it has this kind of awful underneath that once you rip it apart and separate the 2 layers, does make a pretty good forest floor. Comes in a bag like that. And I was pretty unsure of it when I first bought it, so I took a picture of it so I'd have it so I could buy another one like it. But you could do some pretty good scenery with the thing. So what I've done, and there's a couple places where I've used them. Like I said, I got an effect with them where something, again, like Sparker does a pretty good job, where he has the grass grow out and has the ground has eroded away underneath, leaving that little blunted edge overhanging that is root mass and such. And I've done that in a couple places to recreate that effect. In this little creek seat, I've done that as well. And you've got these little rows of grass where the scenery is kind of eroding out underneath. All right. I realize we run pretty long tonight, guys, so we may come back and I'll show you how I solve some of the thickness problems in the future. All right, Johnny, if you want to close us up.
Alrighty, I want to say go to YouTubeMallBuilders.com. There you can check schedules for the Tuesday and Wednesday night shows. They're at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern time. And the Thursday shows also at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And be sure and keep an eye out. We'll do a posting, but we're hoping to get confirmation on maybe doing a special show here in just a few weeks, pretty close to the end of the month. So if we can get that confirmed, I think everybody will be interested in seeing this show. So with that said, let's see. Yeah, the only thing we got this week is the Johnny Mall Trading Talk show. That'll be on Thursday. So that'll be May the 10th. So we'll see you on Thursday night. Everyone have a good evening and be safe. stay off the railroad tracks.